So today I'm going to be going over 10 of the best designer fragrances that you can spend your money on. A lot of these are going to be leaning towards people who are on a budget. Now I could have gone about this video a couple different ways. I could have sat down and just listed off 12 of my favorite fragrances, like my personal favorites, because of course I would be biased and of course I would think that those are worth your money. But the problem with doing that is a lot of those might be a little bit more specific. They could be not really the best fit for everybody. So what I tried to prioritize with this video was to come up with a list of things that for the most part are going to be super mass pleasing, not even just for getting compliments and all that sort of thing, but for the buyer yourself. So you can go into these and have a better chance at really kind of starting to like these right off the bat versus getting into something where it needs to grow on you over time. I did try to kind of think of a couple different approaches as well, so I did throw in some things that I still think are very likable, but maybe you wouldn't normally think of. So I will link these down below to discounters as per usual, so you can get some of these at significantly better prices than retail, which is always nice. And like I said, we have 12 of them to get through, so let's get started. We'll kick things off with John VARVATOS Artisan Pure. Orange, clementine, petitgrain, some light woods, some musk. This is going to be a really great fit for summertime, spring, summer, whatever it may be, just warm weather generally. It's going to be super versatile. It's very refreshing, very clean, and it has a nice upscale quality about it. There's nothing that's going to be youthful or boring or basic about this one. It's a citrus fragrance done in a non-traditional way to some extent, and that's why a lot of people really like it. Now, don't get me wrong, like with anything, there could be some people out there who don't normally go for this sort of thing, and generally that's going to be people who just don't like overly orangey, citrusy, kind of petitgrain leaning fragrances. So if that's not you, then don't go into this one. But I do think for a lot of you guys out there who do want something fresh, this is a nice option. And again, it's kind of going to be something to give you a little bit of a different take on a typical summer scent. Most guys around you are not going to be wearing something like this. Now, you guys know I love tobacco, and I could have put in some of my favorite tobacco fragrances that I talk about all the time, but some of those might be, again, a little bit challenging or just a little bit harder to digest, so to speak, especially when you get over to the niche side of things, they get much more expensive. So here's a designer-priced, designer-level tobacco scent that doesn't have a whole bunch of frills and super unique qualities about it. It's not super packed to the brim with a whole bunch of stuff going on. It's relatively simplistic and stripped back, but it's still really impressive. And it's actually been one that has impressed me a lot. I think it's really good for the price. It's Robert Graham Fortitude. So I think right now, like $58 on discounters for 100 ml, somewhere around in there. It's got tobacco, tonka bean, some patchouli. It's very masculine, sweet, but with a nice woody quality as well, so it's not going to the point where it's your typical overly sweet scent. There's some balance here, and then a nice kind of dry but somewhat red pipe tobacco, dusty tobacco accord, which I really think is something that's really fitting for this scent overall. It's not syrupy tobacco, it's not too rough, it's not too sharp, anything like that. It's nice and smooth, it's very easy to pull off and very likable. I think this will be a really nice, more so entry-level tobacco scent that a lot of guys would really enjoy. Next up, something a lot more versatile even still, we have MISSONI Parfum. This one has birch, it's got grapefruit, some musk, some other woods going on in here, some lemon. Now, this is going to be often compared to like Bleu de Chanel, and while I don't think that it's a clone, I do think that it does accomplish a similar thing, it being that it's citrusy and with kind of a smoky woodiness, so to speak. It's kind of what Bleu de Chanel does, and this has a little bit of that going on. If you were after a Bleu de Chanel clone, there are better clones out there. Again, I don't think this is a clone, and that's kind of why I actually featured it, because of course you could feature Bleu de Chanel in this video. It's more expensive, but you could do it. Again, you could put a clone, but this is going to be a little bit different. It's going to set you apart a little bit more when you're up against people who are wearing Bleu de Chanel or other blue fragrances. This one just kind of does its own thing overall. Very mature, a little bit more upscale and classy than some other fragrances in this category, and just up against other blue fragrances overall. Again, I don't even think this is a blue fragrance, but when you kind of compare this to what the vast majority of guys are going to be wearing, you are really going to stand out. Great news is I think it's like $40, $45 on discounters. Nice magnetic cap, great performance. It is a Parfum. For the price, this is a really, really good pickup that I don't think you should sleep on. And sticking with the theme of just things that are doing it a little bit differently, we could go with like Armani Code Parfum. So yeah, it's Armani Code, right? It's got that DNA, but this one introduces some iris, which I really like a lot. And you know, it's not to the level of being perhaps challenging like Dior Homme Intense or Valentino Uomo Intense. See, those are the type of things that initially I would want to put into this video because I love those fragrances. I'm very passionate about them. But I do understand that not everyone will like those and nothing will please everybody. But you do have a better fighting chance of really liking this one over some of those others, especially if you're a bit newer. Because overall, Armani Code Parfum is going to be fresher. It's a fresher take on iris, even though it still does have some tonka bean, some dusty sweetness. It's just going to be easier to digest and easier to pull off. More versatile, better compliment getter, and all of that good stuff. And because it has that code DNA, it's going to be somewhat familiar. It's going to be very likable though. And with the iris, it does give it that little bit of a twist. So overall, I do think you're going to stand out and smell amazing when you wear this one. Now, when it comes to traditional blue fragrances, I kind of figured I should put one in here just because you really can't go wrong with them. And especially with this one, the price point especially makes it such a competitive scent. I mean, this one is about $45 on discounters, which when you compare it to a lot of the other big blue fragrances, Sauvage, I just gave it away. Sauvage, Bleu de Chanel, and YSL all around $100. Dylan Blue is less than half that price. So it really is competitive, guys. And when you also factor in the performance of this one, it really can hang out with those. And it's stronger than stuff like Bleu de Chanel. So it has incense, it has ambroxan, some C notes, patchouli. It's going to be a sweeter, smokier nighttime take on the blue scent, but all around it can be worn pretty much anytime. But with this added sweetness, it makes it actually really, really good for winter time because it will hold up better compared to something that's going to be fruitier and fresher like YSL EDP. All around, if you're on a budget and you're looking for a beast mode blue, you got to check out Dylan Blue. And again, while it may be boring to some people, I do think this is one every guy should look into at some point. I'm going to go with another different take on an iris scent. You know, I do think if you are kind of trying to build up a collection of things that are going to be relatively budget friendly and also wearable and versatile, but you also want to stand out at the same time, it can be hard to balance those. Featuring some of these types of iris fragrances can really get you ahead because again, we're not going into the super sweet ones that are challenging. We're going with ones that are a little bit fresher, and that's going to set you apart drastically. Gentleman Eau de Toilette Intense is a great example. It's got iris, it has cypress, it's got tonka bean. Basically, it's going to be one of their fresher takes on iris, and the way this is done, it really makes it so wearable. You know, it's not Prada L'Homme, it's not a clone of that one, but it's in a similar vein of just a fresh iris. Now, Prada L'Homme itself is going to be even fresher. It's going to have some citrus, some neroli, that sort of thing, a lot more musk. Whereas this one, it's got more woods and aromatics overall with that iris. So it's a little bit heavier, a little bit more dense, but still very wearable. And this is the type of thing that I would say most dudes generally wouldn't go for, but I think if they did pick it up and try it, they would be pleasantly surprised. It's just a really nice, refreshing take on a DNA that's going to set you apart, and it really doesn't hurt the bank all that bad. Really affordable stuff with great performance, great quality. Now, if you want one that's going to be pretty exclusive to fall and winter time up next for a decent price, you could go with Ferragamo UOMO Signature. Coffee, leather, tonka bean. So this is going to be actually a little bit more masculine and refined compared to the original UOMO, which is still very sweet. It's sweeter, but this one just kind of dials it back and makes it more obtainable in terms of a scent profile. I just think a lot of people would get a little bit fed up with the original, maybe get a little bit overwhelmed by it because it is so sweet, but this one is easier to pull off. Now, don't get me wrong, that original is one of my favorites, but like I said, trying to remove myself from the equation a little bit and to approach this more objectively, I think for a lot of guys, the signature might be the way to go if you're just going to get one of them and you don't want to maybe get into something that's in over your head a bit too much. So this one is a little bit more masculine with the leather. The coffee accord in here is a nice touch. It's not like overly coffee-ish. It isn't all about coffee, but you get some of it, and it's a nice little twist. Really, really great performer, great compliment getter for the cold weather. Let's keep it rolling with Prada Luna Rossa Ocean. Really do like the bottle of this, especially on camera. Super sleek looking. So this one is interesting because it's ocean, it's blue, so you're thinking blue fragrance, but they already have a blue fragrance essentially, Carbon, which is a clone of Sauvage, right, or very heavily inspired by Sauvage, which is a blue fragrance, so it's kind of a weird one to classify. Now, this one's very aromatic leaning. You've got the amberwood, some tonka, some bergamot, a little bit of iris, some lavender, some sage, a lot of aromatics. So to me, it kind of places it in the category of like a Ralph's Club / YEDP type of thing, which could be kind of classified as blue fragrance, but it's the newer style of blue. Instead of just boatloads of ambroxan and pepper and bergamot, we're going with some fruits and some sweeter notes and some aromatics. It's kind of how this one is to some extent. And also there aren't any aquatic notes. It doesn't smell watery to me. It doesn't smell like an ocean. So the name could be a little bit misleading, but I digress. The point is, when it comes to a versatility and mass appealing standpoint, this just crushes it. I mean, this type of thing just works time and time again, over and over again. And there's a reason why brands are putting out stuff like this. It's because that's what the people want. So if this is boring to you, that's understandable. But in terms of putting your money into something that you're going to be able to get a lot of wearings out of and get a lot of compliments from, this is one you should consider. Now, this next one is a little bit overshadowed, primarily because it didn't get the biggest push when it came out, because it doesn't really do what some of the other line does. It does it in a different way. From Armani, it's Acqua di Gio ABSOLU. So, you know, I remember when this came out, and it just didn't take long for it to get shunned or buried, quote unquote, to some extent, because it kind of has a little bit of that Invictus Aqua DNA going on. You've got sea notes or aquatic notes, woods, tonka bean sweetness, that sort of thing, right? It's kind of loosely inspired by that DNA, Invictus Aqua, Versace Vase, whatever, just kind of similar to that, but with its own twist. So it does vary quite a bit from Profumo, the original, and this, you know, came before Profondo, but Profondo as well. It's just nothing like any of those. And so because of that, it just didn't get picked up all that much. All in all, if you are after something that's going to be just undoubtedly very likable, very versatile and wearable in the summertime, and just a really nice pickup for not a whole lot of money on discounters, it is a little bit more affordable than some of the others. This is a nice one to have around. I do recommend it for that. And, you know, again, it doesn't get the love that some of the others do, but I personally really like it as well. Armani Code Colonia is also one that kind of got shunned, but I do think brings a lot of value, especially for the price. One of the more affordable codes on discounters. It's got some amberwood in here, some bergamot, some other citruses, and it's going to be kind of their fresh blue fragrance code, but it doesn't smell like really any of the other blues, which is why I chose this one, because you're kind of getting into something that's also going to be very wearable without smelling too much like a Dylan Blue or that sort of thing. Now, this one is nice because it also is combining some of the sweet aspects from the code DNA, but then freshening it up and just making it a little bit more versatile. Solid performance on this one as well. I just think that it should be given a chance. You know, if you have some money laying around and you want to get into something that you're really going to enjoy and be able to use for a lot of situations, this is a pretty cool one to have around. I've always really liked this one, even though generally in the community, it just doesn't get a whole lot of love. Second to last, we have Dolce & Gabbana The One Gray. So this one has vetiver, cardamom, and a little bit of musk in here. Now there's a little bit of tobacco, but you don't get as much of that as you do in like the originals, but it's there just slightly. So basically, this is going to be your fresh daytime version of the one, is essentially how I look at it. So you can wear this in the day to work, to school, and in the evening when you have a date coming up, you're going to be going out with friends. You could spray the one eau de parfum over top. They're going to layer perfectly, and now you have something that's more nighttime oriented that was easy to change into. Now, it's not to say that you can't wear the one EDP during the day. You absolutely can, but this is going to be a little bit more fresh, again, like I had mentioned, but also office appropriate. I think it's just, there's nothing that's overly seductive about this one. It's a lot easier to pull off and a lot more versatile. Now, what's crazy is I've seen the one gray for as low as $35 for 100 ml testers with cap, which for a Dolce & Gabbana scent, 100 ml, that's crazy. And even for the one, that's a great price. So that's definitely something worth considering. And last up, another one that's actually around the same price. Kind of end it with a couple cheapies if you want to spend just kind of a smaller amount of money on something that's going to be very versatile. You can go with that one or with Hugo Boss Selection. I've talked about this a good amount on the channel. Musk, pink pepper, some grapefruit in here. Nothing else smells like this, which I think is really cool considering the price point. A lot of things in this price point can start to run together, especially when you're getting into fresher ones. You know, that's going to be the bulk majority of this price point. Freshies, they're super easy to produce, they're cheap to produce, but this one is unlike anything else. Heavy on the musk, heavy on the pink pepper. It's got a little bit of a kind of a musky sweetness about it, but then still very fresh and citrusy as well. Super clean, super wearable, very classy. There's nothing that's super outlandish about this one. Nothing that's loud and overbearing. It's just down to earth. It's very minimalistic and super easy to pull off that pretty much anyone is going to like. All right, you guys, that's going to do it for me. 12 of the best fragrances you can spend your money on. If you're kind of on a budget, you're looking for some designers that you know you can get your money's worth out of. These are all going to be super easy to wear and very likable. Links will be down below. That's going to do it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy. We'll see you tomorrow with another one. Take care.